Hey, what's going on, fantasy football fans? This is Mitchell with FF Real Talk, and we're through 2 weeks of the fantasy season. And week 2 was like, if I can remember correctly, was very similar to week 2 or week 3 of last year, where the injury bug hit and stung at an all-time high. A lot of prominent players, early round picks, be it running backs and receivers, went down this weekend. Adrian Peterson owners, Danny Woodhead owners, Brandon Marshall is questionable, Arian Foster is out, Eric Decker is hurt, Julio got hurt again. It's just a number of players who we need, who are either out for the season or problematic going forward. The one thing about the injuries is obvious. We all know that it can put a dent in your roster and screw up your entire plans of your season going forward. But what injury does is open up opportunities for other players. And in week 1 through 4 of the fantasy season, the waiver wire is never more plentiful than those weeks. And this is another week where you got to take full advantage of what's out there before the landscape becomes barren. So without further ado, that leads us to the week 3 waiver wire ads. You know the format if you watch the show already. It's anybody in the ESPN standard leagues. I don't think I mentioned that last week, but ESPN standard leagues who are 59% owned or less. And we're going to get right started with the number 1. And he was on the list last week, so I'm not sure why he still is under 60% owned, but it's Tajae Sharpe. I spoke about him last week. He's the co-number 1 option in a very pass-oriented offense with a pass-oriented quarterback. Through 2 weeks, he's had 11 catches on 18 targets. That's all you need to know. He's only 59% owned. Not even going to say anything more about him. Just get him if he's out there in your league, period. Don't ask about it. Somebody on your team can get cut for this guy. I have the feeling he's going to finish as the top rookie receiver. It's a toss-up between him and Corey Coleman. But we got Sterling Shepard and all this. I really think Tajae has a great chance to end topping him as well as Coleman. So we'll see what happens. But he doesn't need to be this low owned going forward. And we're going to see a spike in it going starting this Wednesday when the new percentages come out. He'll be about 70-80. So this is your last chance. Number 2, Cameron Artis-Payne. I know y'all are thinking, why is he on the list? He didn't even play this week. Well, 2 things. 1, he was a healthy scratch because he's a similar player to Jonathan Stewart, and that often happens. Now, I don't know why he was a healthy scratch for Jonathan Stewart's injury propensity, but this goes way back to the days where D'Angelo and Jonathan Stewart were splitting carries. Jonathan Stewart is always hurt, and it's just been that he was upright most of last season. But the risking on this Stewart is this. So it's not as bad as Arian Foster risky, but Jonathan Stewart is always a risk. And Artis-Payne isn't a fantastic running back, but he has a similar skill set to Jonathan Stewart where he's a power back, more so than Fozzy Whittaker. But now a backup is going to be needed. It's going to be more geared to him or Fozzy Whittaker. And I think for the most part, the only reason Payne wasn't getting it is because he wasn't active last week. He would have had more of the first shot if anyone knew that Stewart was going to get hurt, and he would have been better with the shot, just like he did last year, was better than Fozzy Whittaker. So you can't expect much from him. You can just expect modest production in Stewart's absence, which is probably going to be multi-week as we're hearing it now. Again, nothing fancy, but a starting running back in this league has value, even if it's for a few weeks here and there. So he's a good, solid pickup for this week. Number 3, Victor Cruz. It looks like he's for real now. I wasn't trusting it before the season start, and a lot of people were hoping for it last year. It looks like he's healthy. He looks great out there. And when Victor Cruz is healthy, Anybody who pays attention to any level of football, especially the fantasy level, knows that he can put up fantasy-friendly numbers as well as the top tier of any receiver that you would have. He can compete against any of those for numbers. In week 2, he got 8 targets, and with Odell Beckham Jr. getting bracket coverage, and in particular this week he's going to be shadowed by Josh Norman, I expect Victor Cruz to go off this week, him and Sterling Shepard. So the opportunities are going to be plentiful, and this is going to be about your last week to get in on this sweepstakes of Cruz, because it's about to run out. So this should be the last week where he's under 60% on. Take advantage, grab Victor Cruz. He's probably better than some receiver you have right now, especially with what I project for him to be going forward. Number 4, Tyrell Williams. 6 targets, 3 catches and a touchdown. That's a nice way to start off and to fill the expectations that some people were projecting as early as last week and early in the season over Dontrell Inman, and even some people like him better than Travis Benjamin. But you saw that Travis Benjamin is going to be explosive in this offense with Keenan Allen down. But Tyrell Williams is a big body. He reminds me of Vincent Jackson back in his younger years when he was with the Chargers. And with the ultimate gunslinger in Phillip Rivers, this is set up to be loaded with fantasy goodness all season long. And he's a definite sleeper DFS pick for all of y'all that play things like DraftKings, FanDuel, etc. Sneaky pick because he's still cheap. So you want to add somebody for upside, you can't do much better than Tyrell Williams. So take a look. Number 5, Matt Asiata. We've been down this road before. A couple seasons ago when Adrian Peterson was out the whole year. Any time that Adrian Peterson is out, it's going to be, over the last few years, it's going to be between Matt Asiata or Jerick McKinnon. And for the most part, anytime this happens, Matt Asiata takes the reins, especially in power back work and goal line work. I'm sometimes torn between who I'd rather have between him and McKinnon, but at least Asiata puts up numbers. Although they can be touchdown dependent or big play dependent, still, it's better than nothing. And McKinnon often gives you nothing. Again, like I said with Cameron Artis-Payne, a starting running back, even if it's for spot starts, has value in this league. And if it's between him and McKinnon, I'm taking Asiata first. He edges him out. So it's not like, again, this is going to be beautiful, but I think he's going to get the lion's share of the work. So take Big Matt if you're looking for a fill-in for running back, especially if you're Adrian Peterson owner. Number 6, Christian Michael. Similar situation to this AP thing. I don't know what's up with Thomas Rawls. This is turning out to be one of the fantasy busts of the early season. He's partially hurt. It's partially that I don't know if he's as good as we thought he was. And the worst part about it is I got way too many shares of Thomas Rawls in my league spread out. I own him on too many teams. But the problem is Christian Michael ain't much better. There's a reason he's been on this Seahawks team for years and has never ascended any better than where he's been now. It's his play and it's his discipline. But he did have a good preseason. A lot of people saw that, and maybe it's going to be a later thing than now. So he's worth the ad simply because of that, because this Seattle team looks awful. I don't know if it's that Marshawn Lynch was truly the heart of that team, and now without him, they're gutless, but Seattle looks to like trash early this season. And I don't know if it's going to be the whole offense that's going to sputter, but it's looking like a terrible situation. But again, starting running back value. If Christian Michael's going to be stepping in for some of Thomas Rawls' work, whether it be injury or just playing better, you might want to have a look at him, and you definitely want to still own him if you have the misfortune of owning Rawls like I do in several leagues. Number 7, Matt Ryan. If y'all watch my preseason rankings, in particular my video on quarterbacks, I mentioned him early. He's received a lot of hate from owners over the past few years, in particular last year, because he was a turnover machine. His numbers weren't looking good, and I totally understand it. But he's, like I said in the preseason, he's been too good in the past to completely write off of the fantasy radar all the way around. And another thing about him is with all these injuries, especially a lot of times the quarterback, he always remains relatively healthy. But most importantly, when you have a target like Julio Jones, you have to pay attention. And here's the main reason why Matt Ryan needs to be owned within top 12 to 15 level of quarterbacks. You see this mess of a running game Atlanta has? They don't know what they want to do. Devontae Freeman ain't looking all that great. Tevin Coleman's looking some better. Neither are looking spectacular. Julio Jones is their one dependable thing. You got to throw that ball to him. Matt Ryan's going to be the recipient. And another thing, if you've been noticing Jacob Tamme, he had great rapport with him last year. It's looking like it's holding on. And if you remember Tamme from back in the days with the Colts and the Denver Broncos, you know he has some catching talent. So this is kind of a year where Matt Ryan gets back to where he should have been. So keep a lookout on him if you don't grab him, but you probably own somebody I'd rather have Matt Ryan over. For all of you that own, I tell you, and I'm not saying this to cut bait early, but I wouldn't be mad if I owned Matt Ryan over Kirk Cousins at this point. I'm serious. Maybe this Kirk Cousins thing is going to turn around, but it wouldn't kill me if you cut Kirk Cousins for Matt Ryan. I ain't going to slap you about it. I ain't going to be upset about that. That's not going to be anything that's going to be, hey, that's a problem. So keep it in mind if you got quarterback issues. Number 8, Quincy Enunwa. I'm not even sure I'm pronouncing that right. But I have been noticing what the Jets are doing. With Brandon Marshall going down last week with what looked like could have been a multi-week loss. But Brandon Marshall is so tough, I'm not surprised he played through it. With Eric Decker having a shoulder issue after this crazy goodness fantasy game he gave me to help me win my week in my listener league, to be honest. Eric Decker is always a stud, man. Quincy was targeted heavily in both games. 9 catches in the first game, 7 in the second. That's 16 catches on the season. And like many of the wide receivers on this list, he has a quarterback that likes to throw. Enunwa is a guy that you want to add. I mean, honestly, I tell you what, he's like a dead lock with Tyrell Williams, might be before him, but definitely behind Victor Cruz. I really like what I'm seeing. And again, most opportunities are based off injury. So if something's up with Marshall or Eric Decker, you want to grab him. Number 9, Fozzy Whittaker. I just talked about Cameron Artis-Payne. Just like him, he's no thrill of a player, but he has a different skill set. He does a few more things, not so much power. He catches a little more, which explains why he was active when Payne wasn't. This team likes to run a lot, and I've said that before, and Cam can't do it all himself. But similar to the situation in Kansas City where the touches can be similar between both backs, and I'm talking about Charkandrick West and Spencer Ware, it's a situation where whoever looks the best gets the most work, or just whoever does the best is going to be the one who has the best fantasy numbers. It becomes an obvious thing. But if you noticed in week 1 especially, the Kansas City work was almost split between touches. It's just Spencer Ware's a better player, and Artis-Payne is a better player. But we don't know when you're trying to figure out who's going to be the guy to fill in. So Fozzy might look better this week, and he was the one from last week. And if going forward he looks better, he'll be the one that takes it. So keep an eye out on which one is going to be the one to absorb these carries and touches, Payne or Whittaker. Both have a chance to do it, so keep an eye on both. Same thing goes for number 10 with Jerick McKinnon. I mentioned him earlier. He hasn't impressed me with the opportunities he's had, but he's a speedy back in a system that's dependent on the run, especially with the quarterback situations being in flux as they've been over recent years. They have Sam Bradford now, and they have that connection between Bradford and Diggs. And I'm looking at this as to be, I think Stephon Diggs is going to be one of the highest scoring fantasy players on the season. I missed out on him in every league because of this whole quarterback thing. A lot of the leagues I drafted before the Sam Bradford trade, but this Stephon Diggs thing looks real, and that's going to be the primary source of Vikings points. So that puts a hindrance on McKinnon and Asiata. But Asiata might fizzle, and it might open up doors for McKinnon to do it. He's going to get his chances. He's had his chances before, and he's going to get them now, because who else is going to? With an MCL tear, meniscus, tear, Adrian Peterson isn't a sure thing. I don't think he's going to play this week. They'd be a fool to play him this week, but that is a Warrior, so we'll see. But that's one person you might want to consider. Few honorable mentions, Dennis Pitta. If you've been watching, he looks great. And a lot of people thought his career was over, but anyone who knows Joe Flacco knows he likes to throw to Pitta, and Pitta is looking great. Did first week, looked even better week 2. I expect this to continue going. Carson Wentz looks real good for a rookie quarterback, quite poised in the pocket, and he might finish out the year one of the better quarterback adds in the league, especially in a 2-quarterback league. He definitely should be owned already. I mentioned him already before this, Jacob Tamme. He's got a rapport with Matt Ryan. He can put up some numbers, and he's got the skills to do it. He's not just a blocking tight end. And a few more, Kenny Britt. You know what Kenny Britt's situation is. He'll be a one-on, one-off. Just keep an eye on him. Jamison Crowder, I've been impressed with him since he came to Washington last year. He doesn't put up big numbers, but he's quite dependable. And if this Kirk Cousins thing works itself out, he'll be a beneficiary of it. Danny Amendola. He had a great game, but with this Garoppolo thing going, who knows? Tom Brady will be back soon, so it's a guy to keep an eye on. And lastly, Kyle Rudolph, another recipient of this better play, will be more of a recipient of this better play from the Vikings quarterback position. Keep an eye out on him too. But that's it for this week, folks. As usual, you know the drill. If you got any questions, ask me on Twitter, preferably. Follow me on Twitter, preferably, as opposed to putting questions here. If you put questions here, if I see them, I'll definitely respond. Give me a like and thumbs up or whatever you want to call it. And again, subscribe to the channel if you watch every week. Spread the word also. You know what I'm saying? I do this for the fans and I do it for free. So, you know, it's all love. So show some love back. So that's it for a week going into week 3. Good luck to you guys, and we'll catch you next time. Have a good one.